Top 10 Women Who Managed to Escape Prison. Welcome back to Creepshow. Today, we're diving into some of the most daring and unbelievable prison escapes ever attempted by women. While we often hear about notorious male escapees, there are plenty of women who've pulled off remarkable breakouts too. From escaping high-security prisons to fleeing across countries, their stories are as fascinating as they are mind-blowing. Whether they escape to protect their loved ones, flee abuse, or simply find freedom, these women proved that determination and cunning know no gender. Stay tuned for the top 10 women who managed to escape prison. Number 10. Deborah Gavin. Deborah Gavin pulled off an audacious escape from the Georgia Women's Correctional Institution in Baldwin County in 1974, where she was serving a sentence for armed robbery. Despite several previous attempts, she was always quickly recaptured, until this time. After her final escape, Gavin fled to Frankston, Texas, and assumed a new identity as Deborah Murphy. She started a new life, married, had 2 children, and worked as a nurse for 33 years. However, in 2007, her long life on the run came to an end when authorities discovered her whereabouts and arrested her. Gavin later revealed that she fled the prison due to sexual abuse and harassment by the guards, a claim that would later be echoed by numerous lawsuits filed against the prison in the 1990s. The prison became the center of a major scandal, and in 1993, the facility was converted to house male inmates only. Her escape and reasons behind it gained significant media attention, leading to many people writing letters to the governors of Georgia and Texas, asking that Gavin be allowed to stay in Texas. Ultimately, the Georgia authorities decided not to pursue her extradition, allowing her to remain in Texas and live out the rest of her life in peace. Stay tuned for the next incredible story as we continue exploring the daring escapes of women who defied the odds. Number 9. Margaret B. Smith. In 1974, Margaret B. Smith was convicted of fraudulently writing checks totaling over $200. She was sentenced to 4 years at the Correctional Institution for Women in Raleigh, North Carolina. However, during the final months of her sentence, while residing at a halfway home in Robeson County, Smith executed a daring escape that would keep her on the run for decades. Margaret claimed that her 7-year-old daughter had delivered some distressing news, compelling her to leave the halfway home to protect her family. The exact nature of this upsetting information remains a mystery, as Smith never disclosed the details. Utilizing her cunning and determination, she managed to evade capture and fled to Florida, where she adopted the alias Margaret Valias. There, she built a new life, got married, and started a family with 2 children. For 33 years, Margaret lived under her new identity in Texas, successfully blending into her community as a nurse and dedicated mother. Her ability to remain undetected was a testament to her resourcefulness and the limitations of law enforcement at the time. However, her long period of freedom came to an end in 2015. An FBI task force, in collaboration with the Department of Public Safety of North Carolina, conducted a comprehensive search that ultimately led them to her residence in Texas. Upon locating her, authorities moved swiftly to arrest Smith and bring her back into custody. Her escape highlighted significant flaws within the prison system and sparked widespread media attention. Margaret had initially fled to escape the rampant sexual harassment and abuse she endured from guards, a claim that later gained credibility through multiple lawsuits filed against the prison in the 1990s. These lawsuits revealed a dark history of misconduct within the institution, leading to its conversion into a male-only facility in 1993. Following her arrest, numerous individuals wrote letters to the governors of Georgia and Texas, advocating for her to remain in Texas and expressing outrage over the treatment she received in prison. The overwhelming public support and mounting evidence against the prison's practices influenced the authorities' decision not to extradite her, allowing Margaret B. Smith to live out the remainder of her life in Texas, free from incarceration. Margaret B. Smith's escape and subsequent evasion of justice for over 3 decades remain one of the most remarkable and controversial prison break stories. Her case underscores the lengths to which some individuals will go to secure their freedom and the ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement in tracking and apprehending escaped inmates. Margaret B. Smith's incredible escape and long evasion of the law highlight the extraordinary lengths some will go to attain freedom. Stay tuned for the next incredible story as we continue exploring the top 10 women who managed to escape prison. Number 8. Squeaky Fromme. Lynette Squeaky Fromme was one of the most notorious female associates of the infamous cult leader Charles Manson. As a devoted member of Manson's family, Fromme was deeply trusted and committed to his twisted ideology. Unlike some of her fellow followers, she was not directly involved in the numerous murders orchestrated by Manson and his followers in 1969, which allowed her to evade suspicion and arrest during the initial manhunt for the cult. Fromme's unwavering support for Manson continued even after the brutal killings. She maintained her loyalty during his trials, often staying close to him as he was moved between various prisons. Her dedication was so intense that she took up residence outside the courthouses where Manson was held, following him from one location to another in a desperate attempt to remain by his side. In 1975, driven by her fanaticism, Fromme made headlines when she confronted President Gerald Ford in Sacramento. On September 5, 1975, she approached Ford in a Sacramento courthouse holding a loaded firearm, demanding that he free Charles Manson. The situation was defused without any shots being fired, but Fromme was immediately arrested and charged with attempted assassination. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Undeterred by her incarceration, Fromme made a daring escape from a maximum security prison in West Virginia in 1987. Her motive was clear. She wanted to reunite with Charles Manson after learning of his terminal cancer diagnosis. However, her freedom was short-lived. Less than a month after her escape, Fromme was apprehended by authorities and returned to prison, where she remained until her release on parole in 2009. Fromme's escape attempt highlighted both her unyielding loyalty to Manson and the relentless efforts of law enforcement to contain such dangerous individuals. Her story serves as a chilling example of the lengths to which some will go to protect their twisted beliefs and the ongoing challenges faced by authorities in preventing and responding to prison escapes. These incredible escapes by women demonstrate that determination and cunning know no gender. Stay tuned as we continue our countdown of the top 10 women who managed to escape prison, each with their own unique and shocking stories. Number 7. The Niantic Five. In 1984, the Niantic Correctional Institution in Connecticut became the stage for one of the most audacious prison escapes orchestrated by women. Nestled within the state's maximum security prison system, Niantic was uniquely designed as an open campus without traditional perimeter barriers, housing the sole female inmates in a facility that emphasized mobility and rehabilitation. Despite the seemingly robust security measures, including window bars spaced just 19.7 centimeters, 7.7 inches, apart, and standing 38 centimeters, 15 inches high, 5 determined women managed to exploit a small gap in one of the prison windows. Utilizing their collective ingenuity and teamwork, they navigated through the narrow space, effectively bypassing the physical barriers that were thought to be impenetrable. On the night of their escape, approximately 1 hour after their final head count, the Niantic Correctional Institution did not realize that the 5 women had vanished. The absence went unnoticed until the following morning, sparking a frantic search by prison authorities. However, the breakout was remarkably swift and meticulously planned, allowing the women to gain a temporary sense of freedom. The escape, however, was short-lived. Within days, the authorities began apprehending the escapees. 2 of the women were caught the day after their breakout, another was apprehended 2 days later, and the final 2 turned themselves in within 10 days of their initial escape. The swift recapture highlighted both the vulnerabilities and the strengths of the prison's security protocols, demonstrating that even the most well-designed facilities can be susceptible to determined and resourceful inmates. The Niantic 5's escape remains a compelling case study in prison security and inmate resourcefulness. It underscores the importance of continuous evaluation and improvement of correctional systems to prevent such daring breakouts. Their brief taste of freedom serves as a stark reminder of the lengths to which some individuals will go to regain their liberty, and the ongoing challenges faced by authorities in maintaining secure and effective prison environments. The Niantic 5's daring escape showcases the incredible determination and ingenuity of these women. Stay tuned as we continue our countdown of the top 10 women who managed to escape prison, each with their own unique and astonishing stories. Number 6. Judy Lynn Hayman. At the age of 23, Judy Lynn Hayman made a daring escape from the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Pittsfield Township, Michigan, in 1977. Convicted of armed robbery, Hayman was serving a sentence that ranged from 16 months to 2 years. Prior to her successful breakout, she had already attempted to steal women's apparel from a store in the Detroit area, resulting in her initial incarceration. Despite multiple escape attempts, Hayman was typically recaptured almost immediately each time. However, her final escape in 1977 proved to be different. Claiming that her 7-year-old daughter had revealed distressing information that necessitated her immediate departure to protect her family, Hayman seized the opportunity to flee. The exact nature of what her daughter disclosed remains unknown, as Hayman never revealed these details. After evading capture, Hayman relocated to Florida, where she adopted the alias Margaret Valleos. In Florida, she successfully reintegrated into society, getting married, starting a family with 2 children, and securing a position as a nurse. For 33 years, Hayman lived under her new identity, maintaining a low profile and building a seemingly normal life. Her freedom came to an end in 2015 when an FBI task force officer, working in collaboration with the Michigan Police Agency, received a tip that led them to Hayman's residence in Texas. Due to a name change in 1983, she was now known as Jamie Lewis. When authorities arrived, they apprehended Hayman and initiated extradition proceedings to return her to Michigan to complete her sentence for larceny. Hayman asserted that her escape was driven by the rampant sexual harassment and rape she endured from guards at the Correctional Institution for Women. Her claims were later substantiated by numerous lawsuits filed against the jail in the 1990s, revealing a widespread sexual scandal within the facility. These revelations prompted significant changes, including the conversion of the prison into a facility for male inmates only in 1993, with all female inmates relocated elsewhere. Following Hayman's disclosure of the true reasons behind her escape, there was a substantial public outcry. Many individuals wrote letters to the governors of Georgia and Texas, advocating for her to be allowed to remain in Texas and requesting assistance in preventing her extradition. Additionally, extensive media coverage sought to cast the Georgia Department of Corrections in a negative light due to the exposed misconduct. Ultimately, authorities decided not to pursue her extradition, allowing Judy Lynn Hayman to remain in Texas and live out the remainder of her life in peace. Her case concluded with the acknowledgement of the systemic issues within the prison system and highlighted the lengths to which individuals will go to secure their freedom and protect their loved ones. Judy Lynn Hayman's escape and subsequent evasion of the law for over 3 decades remain one of the most remarkable and controversial prison break stories. Her ability to successfully assume a new identity and rebuild her life underscores both her resourcefulness and the profound flaws within the correctional system that enabled her prolonged freedom. Stay tuned for the next incredible story as we continue exploring the top 10 women who managed to escape prison. Number 5. Samantha Lopez. Samantha Lopez was serving a daunting 50-year sentence at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Pittsfield Township, Michigan, for her role in a daring bank heist in Georgia. At just 23 years old, Samantha's life behind bars seemed unremarkable, until she met Ronald McIntosh. Ronald, a former Army helicopter pilot, was incarcerated for wire fraud and was set to be paroled the following year. Their paths crossed in the business office of the federal penitentiary in Dublin, California, where both were employed. It was there that their bond deepened, setting the stage for one of the most audacious prison escapes in history. In 1986, Ronald McIntosh seized a rare opportunity to escape. While being transferred to a different institution in California, Ronald managed to evade capture, exploiting a moment of unsupervised freedom. Just 8 days later, with meticulous planning and sheer determination, he orchestrated a dramatic escape using a hijacked helicopter. Samantha, ever the loyal partner, joined him in this bold flight to freedom. For 10 harrowing days, the duo evaded authorities, living on the run and desperate to start anew. Their escape was short-lived. Ronald's attempt to finance their new life led him to write a check from a monitored bank account, drawing the attention of law enforcement. While purchasing wedding rings, a symbolic gesture of their commitment, their luck ran out. Authorities swiftly apprehended the couple, bringing an end to their fleeting taste of freedom. The aftermath was swift and unforgiving. Samantha and Ronald were brought before the court, where their actions were met with severe consequences. Ronald McIntosh received a sentence of 25 years for air piracy and aiding Samantha in her escape. As for Samantha Lopez, her sentence was increased by an additional 5 years, reflecting her direct involvement in the breakout. Their story is a testament to the lengths some will go to secure freedom and the enduring bonds that can form even in the most confined circumstances. Samantha Lopez and Ronald McIntosh's escape remains a remarkable chapter in the annals of prison break history, highlighting both the ingenuity and desperation that drive such desperate acts. Stay tuned for the next incredible story as we continue exploring the top 10 women who managed to escape prison. Number 4. Susan LeFevre. In 1976, Susan LeFevre, a 23-year-old inmate, orchestrated a daring escape from the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Pittsfield Township, Michigan. At the time, LeFevre was serving a sentence of 10 to 20 years for drug-related offenses, following a conviction for armed robbery. Despite previous attempts, she had only managed to evade capture briefly each time, but this final breakout would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life. On the day of her escape, LeFevre successfully navigated through the prison's barbed wire defenses and fled to a nearby street, where her grandfather was waiting to assist her departure. Utilizing her resourcefulness, she relocated to Frankston, Texas, and adopted the alias Deborah Murphy. In Texas, she married, started a family with 2 children, and secured employment as a nurse, effectively blending into her new community and maintaining a low profile for over 3 decades. Her freedom continued uninterrupted until 2015, when an FBI task force, in collaboration with the Michigan Police Agency, received a tip that led them to her residence in Texas. By this time, She had changed her name once more to Jamie Lewis in 1983, further distancing herself from her past. Upon her arrest, LeFevre claimed that her escape was driven by the rampant sexual harassment and abuse she endured from guards at the correctional institution for women. These claims were substantiated by numerous lawsuits filed against the prison in the 1990s, which exposed widespread misconduct and led to significant reforms, including the conversion of the facility into a male-only prison in 1993. Following her disclosure, there was a public outcry for her to be allowed to remain in Texas and not be extradited back to Georgia. Many individuals wrote letters to the governors of both states, advocating for her to be allowed to continue living peacefully in Texas. The overwhelming support and the evidence of systemic failures within the prison system influenced authorities to decide against extraditing her. As a result, LeFevre was granted permission to remain in Texas, where she could live out the remainder of her life free from further prosecution. Susan LeFevre's escape and her ability to assume new identities for over 3 decades highlight both her ingenuity and the significant flaws within the correctional system that enabled her prolonged evasion of justice. Her story remains one of the most remarkable and controversial prison escape cases, underscoring the complexities and challenges faced by law enforcement in tracking and apprehending escaped inmates. Number 3. Sarah Jo Pender. At a Fish concert in the year 2000, Sarah Jo Pender had the opportunity to meet Richard Hull, a convicted drug dealer and a felon. They would shortly start dating and move into a house together in Indianapolis with Andrew Cataldi and Tricia Nordman. After that, they would begin living together. In the morning, Pender went to a Walmart in the neighborhood and purchased a shotgun with a 12-gauge barrel. Later that day, Hull used the shotgun to kill their 2 roommates. When he committed the double homicide, she was not at home. Nevertheless, she would later return to the house that was covered in blood to discover that both of them had been murdered. Following this, Pender went on to assist Hull in acquiring blankets and accompanying him in his vehicle so that they could dispose of the remains in a garbage can. She did not bring the murders to the attention of the local authorities, and she went back to work the following day as if nothing had occurred. Specifically, she stated that she was concerned that she would be the 3rd person to fall victim to Hull. A couple of days later, Hull was taken into custody in connection with the murders, and Pender would be taken into custody the day after that. Nearly a year after their incarceration, evidence began to point toward Pender as the mastermind behind this double homicide. This evidence indicated that she had influenced Hull into killing their roommates. A sentence of 110 years in jail was handed down to her by the deputy prosecutor who was handling her case. She was referred to as the female Charles Manson. In 2008, Pender was able to break out of Rockville Correctional Facility with the assistance of Correctional Officer Scott Spittler and Jamie Long, who had previously been living in the same cell as him. Spittler asserts that Pender persuaded him to drive her out of the facility in a prison van, and that Long would then pick her up in her car. Spittler further says that Pender influenced him. After some time, both of them would be apprehended and found guilty of assisting Pender in escaping. In the latter part of that year, her tale was covered on the television show America's Most Wanted, and she was quickly apprehended in Chicago, where she was residing and working under a previously unknown name. She is still incarcerated at this time. Number 2. Richard Speck and the 1966 Nurses. Richard Speck remains one of the most infamous and brutal serial killers in American history. His massacre of 8 student nurses in Chicago on July 13, 1966, stands out not only for the sheer number of victims, but also for the horrifying nature of his crimes. Speck's actions left an indelible mark on the community and forever changed the landscape of criminal profiling in the United States. On a warm summer evening in 1966, Richard Speck targeted a dormitory housing 9 student nurses at the Palmer House Hilton in Chicago. Under the guise of seeking shelter from a storm, Speck entered the building and began his night of terror. Armed with a butcher knife and driven by a mix of rage, hatred, and a desire for control, he methodically terrorized the young women. Over the course of several hours, Speck brutally assaulted, strangled, and mutilated 8 of the 9 nurses. His attacks were not only violent, but also deeply personal, indicating a level of sadism that shocked both the public and law enforcement. The victims, Christina Zerby, Janice McDonald, Amanda Joyce, Deborah Schutt, Barbara Ann Oswald, Pamela Ann Brecka, Marjorie Ann Green, and Paula Jo Jenkins, were all young, dedicated individuals pursuing careers in nursing. Their loss was felt deeply within the community, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most seemingly secure environments. What made Speck's crimes particularly gruesome was his lack of restraint and the absence of a clear motive. Unlike many serial killers who have identifiable patterns or psychological triggers, Speck's actions appeared random and driven by pure malice. This unpredictability made him a particularly terrifying figure in the eyes of both the public and the authorities. The aftermath of the massacre led to significant changes in how law enforcement agencies approached serial crimes. The scale and brutality of Speck's actions underscored the need for improved communication and coordination between different police departments. Additionally, his case contributed to the development of more sophisticated criminal profiling techniques, aimed at understanding and predicting the behavior of serial offenders. Richard Speck was eventually apprehended on July 17, 1966, 4 days after the murders, thanks to a combination of eyewitness accounts and diligent police work. During his trial, Speck exhibited a chilling lack of remorse, further cementing his reputation as a cold-blooded murderer. He was convicted of 8 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. However, his sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment after the U.S. Supreme Court invalidated state death penalty laws in 1972. Speck remained in prison until his death in 1991, serving over 25 years behind bars. His legacy serves as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity and the importance of vigilance in protecting vulnerable members of society. Richard Speck's massacre of the 1966 nurses is a haunting testament to the darkest corners of the human psyche. As we approach the final entry on our list, prepare yourself for the most chilling and gruesome serial killer murder ever recorded. Number 1. Albert Fish and Grace Budd. Albert Fish, often dubbed the Boogeyman or the Brooklyn Vampire, is one of the most terrifying and depraved serial killers in American history. His murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd stands out as one of the most horrifying crimes ever committed, showcasing the unimaginable depths of human cruelty. In 1928, Fish responded to a newspaper ad placed by Grace Budd's family seeking a babysitter for their son, Edward. Posing as a benevolent older man named Frank Howard, Fish quickly gained the trust of the Budd family. On July 27, 1928, Fish lured Grace away under the pretense of taking her to a party, only to abduct and brutally murder her. Grace Budd's disappearance initially baffled authorities, but Fish's dark secret was soon revealed. He confessed to the gruesome acts he committed, detailing how he tortured, dismembered, and cannibalized Grace. Fish's motivations were rooted in his twisted desires and psychological disturbances, making his crimes not just murders, but also acts of unspeakable horror. What makes Fish's case particularly disturbing is the level of premeditation and the callousness with which he documented his crimes. He sent a chilling letter to Grace's mother, detailing the methods he used to torture and kill her daughter. In this letter, Fish wrote, "I took her to an empty house in Westchester County, where I had everything prepared. I stripped her and began to torture her, believing it would satisfy my twisted desires. I choked her to death and then dismembered her body, consuming parts of her flesh. The taste of her blood was intoxicating, and I could not stop until every part of her had been violated. The brutality of Fish's actions shocked the nation and led to significant advancements in criminal profiling and forensic science. His case highlighted the need for better psychological understanding of violent offenders and the importance of early intervention for those showing signs of severe mental disturbances. Albert Fish was eventually captured in 1934 after a botched murder attempt, and subsequent investigation led authorities to him. During his trial, Fish maintained his sanity despite overwhelming evidence of his gruesome crimes. He was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. However, before his execution could be carried out, Fish committed suicide in his prison cell in 1936. Fish's legacy is a grim reminder of the darkest facets of human nature. His crimes remain some of the most heinous and disturbing in criminal history, continuing to serve as a case study for both law enforcement and psychologists striving to understand and prevent such unimaginable acts of violence. Albert Fish's murder of Grace Budd stands as the pinnacle of gruesome serial killer murders, epitomizing the absolute depths of human depravity. These top 10 stories highlight the most chilling and horrifying crimes ever committed, reminding us of the importance of vigilance and understanding in preventing such tragedies. That was 10 of the most gruesome serial killer murders in history. It's chilling to think about the depths of depravity that some individuals can sink to. If these stories shook you, let us know which one left you the most horrified in the comments. And if you want more true crime stories that venture deep into the shadows, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of Creepshow. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open to the darkness around us.